Welcome to a brand new day of captivating conversations and insightful discussions. This is Vuka Show, our ultimate destination for very thought provoking conversations on global health. It is my absolute pleasure to be your host. My name is Gloria Mululu. And on the show today, we embark on a very interesting conversation about debunking the myths surrounding the HIV vaccine as we commemorate the HIV Vaccine Awareness Day, also referred to as or also known as HVAD. This day is annually commemorated on the 18th of May. And so it is also my absolute pleasure to have a guest with us on the show. And so, through in this engaging interview that we shall have with our guest, our subject matter is going to be unraveling what are some of these myths, that are there in the communities, that are there in the public, that people need us to discuss. What are these myths that pop out in our community conversations? And to our beloved listeners, welcome to the show once again. Please know that your voice matters, your opinion matters. We are really looking forward to engage with you. Please join us on our social media handles. Drop a text. Let us know that where you're watching us from, and we are happy to also have your thoughts and comments on the show. I'd like to introduce Dr. Charlene. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a special treat. Dr. Charlene is not new on the show. She's been here with us before. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest. I call her a trailblazer in research in the HIV prevention space because she's young, just like I am. She's a woman of power. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Charlene, a medical doctor, a research scientist by profession, and she's based in Nairobi, Kenya. She works at Kemri, CCR, PHRD. Daktari, once you join the call, you'll please let us know what exactly you do at work. And so she's also currently involved in clinical research areas, in research areas in areas of HIV prevention among adolescents, sexual and reproductive health, and cervical cancer prevention. Her passion lies in health, empowerment among the adolescents and youth, and she also currently plays a very important role as a COVID-19 task force leader for Kemri. Daktari, during our time together, we will be briefly touching on the basics of vaccines, what are their importance, and also spend some time, like I said, demystifying the myths surrounding the HIV vaccine. Karibu, Daktari.
Thank you so much, Gloria, and greetings everyone across Afrika and across the globe. I'm delighted this day to be part of this show. Thank you so much, Gloria. And just to start, is that we as young people are the voice for the next generation. We are going to make the change. Gloria, you mentioned I'm a trailblazer, but I would say we are also change makers, and change can come through awareness, can come through advocacy. I'm so delighted today that you're going to speak about HIV vaccine. But Gloria would like to just talk briefly about the journey of HIV prevention. I know HIV space has been there for many decades as a global pandemic, and largely with a global burden in the Africa, and just to narrow down, with a huge burden in sub-Saharan Africa. So if we mention already in the pipeline, we have HIV prevention package, and we can mention briefly, for example, of course, we start with the basic abstinence, we use of condom use, we look at prevention of mother to child transmission. We also have we have pre-exposure prophylaxis, and we also have post-exposure prophylaxis. We have voluntary male circumcision, among many others. So just to shed light on what are the current advancements in terms of HIV prevention with focus on pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is more focusing on preventing HIV before the exposure. We have commodities like the daily pill, which is the oral PrEP, and we have, for example, we have different drug combinations for the PrEP commodities. For various reasons, we are still having research going on for PrEP commodities. And we also have new in the pipeline. I know many of us here are aware about the dapivirine ring, the DVR, and it's going to also offer choice, because the main agenda here why we're going to advocate for HIV vaccine and create awareness is to add um, a choice into the basket of HIV prevention. We also have Cabalé, that is cabotegravir, and because of the pill burden due to the oral PrEP, we are hoping that with Cabalé, with the monthly injection of cabotegravir, especially those with high pill burden and they are at high risk groups, they're able to get Cabalé and just on a monthly basis instead of taking it as a daily pill. Now on to HIV vaccine. Um, Let me just talk about the HIV vaccine journey. I know it has been a while, but currently in the globe, we do not have a vaccine that has been approved yet by WHO, by FDA. However, the journey for vaccine, for creating an HIV vaccine is still strong and ongoing. We've had advancements from the landmark RV144 trial, which did not demonstrate enough efficacy, and we moved into HVTN trials, which was found to be uh, safe, yes, but ineffective. So if it is ineffective, it's not going to serve the purpose. Unlike you see the likes of commodities that are already in the pipeline, like PrEP, is more than 99% effective. So
Right.
right now we are having more progress into what we call monoclonal antibodies, and they're called broadly neutralizing antibodies, where the vaccine is going to target directly the molecules in our body. I don't know whether Gloria, you want to have seen you've interrupted. Oh, okay. I carry on. I thought you
Please
had
do.
a prompt. Okay. So the challenge about the HIV vaccine is about the target. Just to explain the basic about a vaccine, how a vaccine works. So the vaccine triggers immune response either on a natural way. For example, we have the normal vaccine that we've been receiving like at childhood levels, like tuberculosis. We're getting the hepatitis vaccines. So triggering the natural immune response. But now the challenge with the HIV vaccine, it has a unique target, and therefore that's the scientists have to develop a molecule that is going to directly target specific uh, targets on the cell, so that it's able to neutralize it. And that's why we see the latest technology about broadly neutralizing. When you say you're neutralizing something, is that you're making it invalid. So we are hoping with the current clinical trials that are in the pipeline, and this is where the HIV research, community participation in HIV research comes in handy, where we have phases of trials, some at late stage and some still early phases, trying to see if we have these vaccines that are going to target directly on the cells once you have an exposure of the HIV virus, before the virus gets into the blood, it's able to neutralize it and it's not going to have an effect, and you're not going to be infected with the virus.
Wow, wow, quite informative, Daktari. And I trust our listeners are, benefiting from this conversation. And, like I said, there's so much happening in global health. We are happy to hear about what the journey has been, what is in the pipeline. We're definitely excited to hear about Kabale, to hear about the Dapi Ring. These are conversations that, not just at a policy level, but even at the community level, I'm sure within a very short time frame, we'll be talking about the regulations that are supporting the different prevention methods that are in the pipeline. So thank you for that, Daktari. I do know one of our audiences rather, is asking a question on how come the COVID-19 vaccine was found earlier than the HIV vaccine. I think, yes, I know COVID is not a very active conversation right now, but we do all acknowledge that the time that it took for the COVID vaccine to be out in the market was much, much faster. And so our audience is asking, how come this COVID-19 vaccine was found earlier? Dr. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gloria. I like that question from the audience. And just to respond, first of all, is let's get down to the basic of transmission. We know majorly for HIV vaccine, it's sexually transmitted. Amongst the other methods, we have direct transmission, for example, from mother to child, which we have already made advancements in preventing mother to child transmission. When you look at COVID was a global threat. You did not need to have you need not need to actively engage yourself to get the infection. This infection was the transmission mechanisms was respiratory and even just touching droplet surfaces, and that really caused a lot of a global consortium. The efforts, it's all about the priorities, Gloria. So look at the threat. It was a global threat. We even look at something um, we have infection prevention control. It really had to call for a lot of efforts because you just needed to have a close distance for you to get the virus, and that was a real huge threat. Already we can agree we've had investments previously on the on strides towards HIV prevention, but this is a new pandemic. So the global goodwill, it was about the global goodwill and the coverage. Look at the burden of disease. The burden was both in the global north and also now where we are in the global south. And it was actually a real security bio threat. So that is the reason why the regulatory processes were fastened. And for HIV, the processes for regulatory have been a bit slower compared to COVID. And even the pharmaceuticals, the interest for the pharmaceutical companies which were manufacturing the COVID-19 was COVID attracted more than 10 huge pharma companies, and they were able to process that factor of the clinical trial phases. And because being a global threat, I would say even narrowing down to the transmission. What was the transmission mechanism? This was going down even to the elderly, to the immunocompromised, to even children. It was not
Children.
cutting across HIV only, like the way it is a major threat to adults. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, that's quite insightful, Daktari. I do note that there are additional comments. We'll be coming back to those, but I'd like us at this juncture to also get into our topic. About the myths. What are these myths that Daktari, you've come across in your line of work? I mean, you're a scientist, you're in the profession, you are in the industry, and I imagine in your day to day, you probably had to debunk some of these myths as you're interacting. So, can you give us a few insights? What are some of these myths?
Yeah, correct. I think in the community out here is that many people think that already we have a vaccine. And so I would say I'd like to debunk that we do not have a vaccine yet. And that calls for community participation in research. And if you're going to be um, involved in the clinical trials that are already in the pipeline, a global call, a call to the country level, a call to the community level. I know currently I work in the Kenya Medical Research Institute, and where I work, we already have a HIV vaccine trial. which is a phase 1-2. That means it is at the earliest stages to see whether these broadly neutralizing antibodies work. We do not know whether they work yet, so we do not have a vaccine yet. The other thing is that since we already have the prevention commodities, and many people feel like, so why do we need a vaccine? And already we have PrEP, we already have
Mhm.
Kabale, we have DVR in the
Right.
pipeline.
EVR. Right.
But I would say, despite PrEP being highly effective, there is a huge pill burden. You know how
Mm-hmm.
many people, I don't know, Gloria, whether you're able to take a drug every day, every single day.
Mm-hmm.
That
It's cumbersome, I imagine.
it's so challenging, you know.
It's
And you know, for PrEP,
challenging, yes.
when you're not adherence, there are issues of
Mm-hmm.
adherence. So we still need a vaccine so that when you, if you're at risk and you get your vaccine, you know you're protected for whatever period of time, whether it is 2 to 3 months. Like, you know, we're even having advancements where we're going to be having combination of HIV with even FP, combination of PrEP with FP.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we need an HIV vaccine so that we can
Mm-hmm.
end the pandemic. It has been long. The pandemic has been long. We hope that if we get if a safe and effective vaccine, will not have the adherence issue that we are currently facing, where we have someone who's been using PrEP for a while and then they stop using it. The next time they come to the clinic, they have seroconverted from HIV negative to HIV positive, and that becomes a huge risk factor.
Indeed. Wow. So that's interesting to hear that, the vaccine doesn't exist, but it is definitely something that is in the pipeline. There is something that our researchers, our scientists are doing about it. I see a question from our audience, and we have Nema Grace. She's asking, should young people have hope for a HIV vaccine? Dr. Charlene.
Yes. So young people need to have hope for HIV vaccine. I know the current challenges we are having. For example, in the local context in Kenya, you can see youth carrying a huge burden, huge burden for new HIV infections. Last year during the World AIDS Day, you realize the great infections were among 15 to 24 years old, the young, and especially among the adolescent girls and the young women, who I'm very passionate about. So we really need to have hope for HIV vaccine. Let us be
Mhm.
hopeful, because I know currently we have promising clinical trials that are
Mhm.
showing safety and efficacy. We are waiting to see what is the level of the efficacy. Will the vaccine work? But yes, as young people, we need that, because when HIV is, let me use the instance of Kenya, when HIV was at a high level burden in our country from 1984 all the way to the 1990s. Now, these are the people, the youth who were born of parents then who contracted the HIV virus, and there was no prevention of mother to child transmission yet.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so we find young people who are actively engaging in sex without consistently and correctly using condoms, and that poses a greater threat to the community, because it becomes a web, Gloria, where
It
you
does.
you have not disclosed you have a non-HIV status, but you find it
Mhm.
hard to disclose to a fellow youth. And so the
Mhm.
chain continues and it continues. So young people, we need to have hope with the current vaccine trials that are ongoing, that one day we'll get a solution, and this
Mhm.
will help us in preventing new infections.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that submission, Daktari. I see we have audiences watching us from Ghana, Victoria from Ghana. Thank you for joining us. We have Sizwe from South Africa, and Sizwe says Wumandla. I think that's a hype from South Africa. Daktari received that. We have Nema Grace. Thank you for joining us from Kenya. I see we have Guy also who says he's connected from YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. Patricia joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much, all our audiences all over. I think we've had quite an insightful session. And I see again we have people from Zimbabwe. I think, Doc, today we were able to reach quite a good number of audience across Africa. Which is basically what also AfNHI represents, because AfNHI is a network of advocates spread across Africa. And so I think I'd like to bring our discussion to a close. This time, I feel like, yes, we've had the conversation, but I still feel like we needed a lot more time to cover all these myths. I know various young people on the call would have wanted us to spend more time. Maybe, Doc, you can indulge us. We could have another session where we can have a more in-depth discussion, maybe just concentrate on what is it that our young people want to hear in terms of these myths that are down at the community level. And so, as we close our show, we definitely want to make a call out for funding for this HIV vaccine. We talk about it, we breathe it, we live it, we want to see it come to pass. And funding for this HIV vaccine is not just a conversation we want to say, we want to see on paper. We want to see it, down to each and every person who's involved in the chain. And so it's definitely a smart investment choice in terms of adding the choice basket for HIV prevention. Colleagues, we'd like to close our show at this juncture. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining us. Thank you, our audience from all over the globe. Asanteni sana. Kwaheri.
Bye.